Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Jerron Harrington, back to hit you another video, and today we're going to be continuing Darling in the Franxx, Lionheart. This is being the crossover between Darling in the Franxx and Voltron, Legendary Defender, Part 2. As always, before we get into today's video, if you enjoy the content on the channel, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcasting that's to come out now and in the future. Also, if you haven't already, please check out some of the other videos that we've had come out this week on the channel, including What If Issei Was the Shield Hero, High School DxD, Devil of the Shield, Season 1, Part 2, What If Naruto Was the Avatar, Naruto Rebirth Shippuden, Part 2, as well as What If Deku Was the Son of Rock Lee, My Hero Academia Fighting Spirit, Part 2 as well. And also, make sure, in case if you haven't seen part 1 of this video, make sure you go watch part 1 before you watch part 2 so that you can be up to date on the story and everything else as we continue. But as always, don't forget, I cannot do it without you. You make the channel grow, you make the core grow, as we are on the road to 2K and beyond. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. With each boy successfully inside of their lion, they would ride out to help the girls who were in their Franxx, engaging with the various worm-like klaxosaurs. While the controls were a bit different, in a way it felt very similar to when they were piloting the Franxx in the first place, almost as if their control designs were based off of the original schematics for Voltron in the first place. Of course, they didn't have too long to think about this. Each lion would go to their respective Franxx, the ones whom they would have originally rode with in the first place. Goro and the Black Lion went to back up Ichigo. Hiro backed up Zero 2. Futoshi backed up Kokoro. Zoromi backed up Miku. And Mitsuru backed up Inkuno. Each girl and each boy working together in unison. The lions holding down the klaxosaur's body, allowing for the Franxx to break free. And the Franxx, using their respective weapons, were able to pin down the lion. Goro and Ichigo would coordinate respectively, Ichigo getting the girls in position, and Goro getting the boys into position as well. Eventually, the klaxosaur's entire body would appear from underground, revealing that instead of it being multiple, it was one long klaxosaur. They needed to find the core and destroy it immediately, as that was the only way to kill it. Goro would come up with the idea to pin it down from multiple positions and to create an opening for Strelitzia and for the Red Lion. The two now knowing what they needed to do, Zero 2 inside of Strelitzia would ride her Franxx on top of the Red Lion. Once the opening was made, Hiro would pilot and move with great speed inside of the klaxosaur's mouth. As they soared through the entire body of the klaxosaur, Strelitzia, using its magnesium spear, would stab it straight through the core before appearing on the other side, destroying it rather swiftly. There were many questions in this moment. The girls wanted to know, where on earth had they gotten these lions? Had Voltron really been true? Of course, Ichigo knew the truth, but she didn't say anything as Goro and Hiro would make sure for her to keep quiet. They already knew many questions were going to be asked once they got back to base, and they didn't want to drag anyone else down unless they had to. The cleanup crew was sent out immediately. The Franxx were restored and the boys exited the lions. The lions were quickly put into storage, but with nowhere else to really put them, they were sent into the same docking bay where the Franxx were resided. The boys would have their keys confiscated and they would be taken in for questioning immediately. Hiro and Goro taking the brunt of it all. Of course, Ichigo wanted to go with them, but the two boys would look at her, telling her to stay with the others, not wanting to get anyone else dragged in as much as possible. Ichigo, while hesitant, would agree, and instead she would choose to inform the girls when they got back to Mistletoe. Once they had arrived, Ichigo would sit them all down somewhere privately, and she would tell them about what had happened a few weeks ago. About the night when the plantation was in stasis mode, how they had accidentally snuck out of Mistletoe, and how they had found the cave that contained the Voltron lions. Everyone was absolutely amazed to think they would have actually done something like that, and that they actually found Voltron. But then, their excitement turned into worry. Worry for the boys, hoping that they would be alright. For Futoshi, Zoromi, and Mitsuru, they were fine since they really didn't know anything up until the moment where Goro and Hiro handed them their keys. Goro and Hiro would take the brunt of it all. They had no choice but to explain that they had found them somehow. Of course, they gave little detail as to how exactly they had found the Voltron cave. However, instead of being met with harsh punishment, Dr. Franxx was actually elated. You see, Dr. Franxx was one of the original humans who had survived from the old times, from the time when Voltron was last in existence, the Great War with the Drool Empire that somehow scattered and it shattered the universe into pieces. From that point on, he had known of Voltron and had known of how it had worked for a bit, but of course he didn't fully understand its ins and outs. The Franxx, in and of themselves, were actually based off of Voltron. Of course, the idea of creating Franxx that could combine together to form one powerful being, well, that seemed a bit too cumbersome for his taste, although there were plans in the works. He, however, was more fascinated with the idea of the Franxx and the lions working together. Of course, all of this really came down to what Papa and the head of those of APE would decide. The council was rather perturbed. They had thought that Voltron was all but gone, but now it existed. And how had it gone so long for them to never have found it? But another question, why was Voltron on Earth? The Voltron lions in and of themselves had roots to many different planets all throughout the galaxy. But for whatever reason, not one, but all 5 lions were hidden on Earth. Some voted for Voltron to be destroyed, but others saw this as an opportunity. The leader believed that with modifications, Voltron could be exactly what they needed. It could be the key to everything. They would need to keep a close eye on things, but if the dummy plug system was allowed to work, and the Franxx could pilot without the need for the stamen, and these young men could pilot the lions instead, this could give them an added benefit in taking out the Klaxosaurs once and for all, leaving all of Earth's rich and mineral material at their fingertips. And if anything, it could expedite their plans a lot faster. Soon, the boys were pulled out of questioning, and they returned back to Mistletoe with the girls. The girls were happy to see that the boys had come back, since they had been extremely worried about them. And with that, they waited for the final results. It took some time, but eventually, they would all be gathered together. Inside of the room, Dr. Franxx would be sitting. The boys would be sitting on one side and the girls on the other. As two nurses would come into the room, they would each be holding a plate. They had something that seemed like a needle for some form of injection, if you will. Dr. Franxx would explain that after looking through Voltron and getting a better understanding of how the lions functioned, they believed that they had come up with a way, and with permission from APE, they would be allowed to use the lions. However, there would be guidelines. For one, Voltron was not to be summoned unless authorization was given. That was a main stipulation. And next, there would be a pairing, if you will. On each plate, there would be a special chip. A chip that would be inserted. These chips would bond the two riders together. One for the Franxx and one for the lions. It was a connection, a bond, similar to when they piloted their Franxx together. This would give them that same feeling, the feeling of being as one, of truly combining in both mind and soul. Goro and Ichigo would look at Hiro nervously. Even if he was in an entirely different robotic structure, he would still basically have the same simulation of being in a riding cockpit with 02 in Strelitzia. This meant that the next time he piloted, it could be his last. The pairings were made as follows. Goro and Ichigo would continue as a pair. The Black Lion with the Franxx, Delphinium. Hiro and 02, while they were still to be monitored, they would be partners as well. Red Lion and Strelitzia. Futoshi and Kokoro. They would be a pair. Yellow Lion and Janista. Zoromi and Miku. They would be a pair. Green Lion and Argenti. Mitsuru and Inkuno. Blue Lion and Chlorophantom. With the pairs now being made together, all that was left was for the other inspections. While searching through, they would find the suits that came with the lions, and as such, they were redesigned and restructured for the boys to use when they piloted them. Once they had been modified, each boy would be given their respective key to the lions. Hiro would be very grateful and immensely happy, although he would feel a brief pain in his chest, though he would try to hide it from his team, just happy that he could be of use to them and be able to pilot. Not too long after, their next mission would be guarding the plantations. Plantations 13 and 26 would be connecting with one another. This was an operation known as kissing. The connection between the two plantations was a way for them to transfer magma energy and other resources between one another. However, this process often attracted many Klaxosaurs, and as such, their mission was going to be to protect the plantations until the process was over. Not only would they be working together, but they would also be working with another squad, Squad 26 of Plantation 26. They had met during the formal ceremony, and they were a bit surprised to see that the Franxx of Plantation 13 were all custom designed. They didn't have one streamlined look like theirs. And even more so was the fact that they were using these lions, apparently. They had heard rumors of Voltron. Everyone had. But the idea that Voltron was actually real, and that Plantation 13 had somehow gotten their hands on them? Word was spreading fast. Plantation 13 had always been a rather odd squad, if you would think, in the sense that no one really knew much about why this squadron was put together. But even more so, it seemed there was always some form of mystery surrounding them. While they were meeting, Zoromi would ask the kids of Plantation 26 if they knew anything about growing up to become adults. He was really happy with this since growing up was something he had always wanted. However, the squad leader of Squad 26 would brush his question off, as it appeared he really didn't know the truth about anything. With that, they would leave them, and Squad 13 would be left to themselves. Although they wouldn't spend as much time together, since the boys would have to go off for a special training. They had to get a better understanding of the controls of their lions. It was a lot of studying and a lot of effort on their part, and they usually didn't get back home until the afternoon or evening. But they were getting a better knowledge. Thankfully, the controls to pilot Voltron lions wasn't really all that different from the Franxx. Of course, there were some functions that were a bit different, but they were able to get the hang of it within time. As they would finish, Hiro would show 02 around Mistletoe, showing her different aspects of their home. One thing that caught 02's interest more than anything was the concept of rain. She wanted to see it, although Hiro would have to tell her that he couldn't actually make it rain. Papa and the adults decided when it rained, but he promised he would try someday. He would ask why she was interested in their home all of a sudden, and that's when he and everyone else would learn that she was going to be living with them. This shocking them all, but they had no choice but to welcome her onto the team. Goro, in the meantime, would still be worried for Hiro, and it wouldn't take long for him to discover the infection on his chest. Hiro tried to hide it as best he could, but the pain was starting to become unbearable. Goro would warn him that even if he tried to pilot the Red Lion, he was connected to 02. They were tethered together. Every time he would activate the Red Lion in Strelitzia, it was essentially the same as them riding together, which could ultimately result in his death. However, Hiro would refuse to give up his right to pilot. They needed all 5 lions if they ever wanted to form Voltron. They needed to work together to stop the Klaxosaurs. This was what he was meant to do. He couldn't just give that up now. If he couldn't pilot, he didn't have a purpose. Goro would insist, but Hiro would simply smile, telling him not to worry. With that, the 2 squads would be joined together and given the parameters for their mission: to protect the plantations from the oncoming enclave of Klaxosaurs. Everything seemed to be going fine until it was revealed that 02 would be on the mission as well. The leader and captain of Squad 26 had no trust in 02 at all for this operation, especially because of what had happened 2 years ago. When they had tried to work together before, she went rogue and did her own thing, and the result was that he lost his partner in the process. Hiro, however, would promise that he would keep an eye on 02, and he gave his word that nothing would happen. As the day of the operation came, Hiro would speak with 02. They would go for a walk around Mistletoe, and they would find the area where they had first met by chance. They would reflect on everything that had happened up until now, both happy that they had found one another, happy that Hiro was now able to pilot once again. However, she would walk to him and unbutton his coat, for she already knew that the infection was taking over. She could tell that he was in a lot of pain. She would warn him that the next time they connect together, he may die, and that this was his last chance to back out. However, Hiro would tell her that he was her partner, and he was going to go out there with her no matter what. He was her lion, and she was his Franxx. That evening, the team would prepare for the operation, the boys suiting up in their Voltron suits. They seemed really different from the standard suits they had before, and they even came with helmets. The girls were rather impressed by their new designs. Another feature that the boys learned they had was that they had melee weapons that they could carry with them. Unsure of why they would ever need such a thing, but if it ever came down to it, they could summon them. Of course, they would keep this hidden as well, deciding that they didn't want them to be taken away so easily. They would still have to keep in mind, though, that despite learning the basic functions on how to form Voltron, they couldn't summon them without permission. Before leaving, the boys would be gathered together, and they would talk about how nervous they were, about piloting the lions for the first time in real combat. To think that they were actually going to be a part of an even greater legacy, the legacy of Voltron, defender of the universe. They wondered if maybe they'd have to go out in space someday and fight other beings. Of course, this idea had come to their mind, but Mitsuru would reason that they hadn't seen extraterrestrials on their planet in well over a century. And the fact of the matter was that after the Great War, planets, they stopped interacting as much. In all likelihood, there was no telling how many other species had survived, or how many more would even still be in existence out there in the first place. Also, space was large, and even though Earth had rather advanced technology, they weren't really in the position to be going off for long periods of time traveling. And they had the Klaxosaurs to deal with as well. There really wasn't much time for them to be leaving. Voltron may leave the planet someday, but it might not be during their lifetime. All the same, Hiro was confident that maybe they would be able to see the stars someday. There wasn't any reason for them not to dream. After all, there were many things they would want to do in life. There was no reason for them to hold back. They should look forward to the future. Zoromi would agree, especially since he had his own dream, to grow up and be an adult someday. Before leaving, Goro would tell Ichigo to speak to Hiro. She did so nervously. There was so much she wanted to tell him, but she couldn't really put it into words. The only thing she could say was that she was counting on him, and Hiro would respond in kind, referring to her as their leader, and that he would be looking for her and counting on her, and that they would both do their best. Soon, before the operation would begin, Ichigo would tell Goro that their plan was to save Sterlitzia and the Red Lion for as long as possible. If they didn't have to use them in the fight, then they weren't going to. That way, they could protect Hiro and save his life. And Goro would agree with this. The squads would get into position as the Klaxosaurs were fast approaching. There were around 150 small ones, and a rather large cube-shaped one close behind. Squad 26 would take the lead, dispatching of the smaller Klaxosaurs from the front lines efficiently, and any stragglers that got past would be left for Squad 13. The members of Squad 13 didn't really like how Squad 26 was talking down to them multiple times, treating them as if they were a hindrance. But they reluctantly agreed and followed through with their mission. The Lions working with the Franxx. They would pin down the Klaxosaurs, and the Franxx using their magma-type weapons, would be able to spear them through much more efficiently, taking out their cores. The lions served as a way of protection for the Franxx. They would guard their blind spots, attack any stray or straggling klaxosaurs, and the Franxx would go in for the kill. The girls were taking some time getting used to being in the large robotic structure by themselves, but they were able to make it work for the most part. Far off in the back, near the heart of the plantation's connections, Hiro and 02 would watch from a distance. Hiro would ask 02 why she fought the klaxosaurs. She was hesitant for a moment, but she gave the answer of believing that she had to kill them, maybe because she thought she was a monster. She would turn and ask Hiro the same thing, and Hiro would think for a moment. He would say it was to protect Papa and the plantation and his friends. 02 looked very uninterested in that answer. She wondered if there was more, but he didn't have any. She thought it was lame, but it made no difference, since the stragglers were giving his friends some hard time. 02 would get inside of Strelitzia, and Hiro would get into the cockpit for the Red Lion. As they would fly out immediately, they would help with the stragglers, continuing to wipe through and back up Squad 13. The captain of Squad 26 admonished them for moving so recklessly, but there was no time to worry about that, as Squad 16 would continue on as they moved towards the main assault. As the fight continued, 02 could sense from Strelitzia that Hiro was starting to give out, and it showed in the Red Lion, as its movements became rather unorthodox and it staggered all over. But Hiro was able to keep going, 02 telling him to fight through the pain. Hiro would agree, and they would keep going fighting the smaller klaxosaurs. In the meantime, Squad 26 would engage with the large klaxosaur. They believed that they had enough power to be able to stop it, but the large cube-shaped klaxosaur would begin to morph, transforming into a large humanoid-like being, referred to as a Gutenberg class, being the largest of all of the klaxosaurs. Squad 26 would quickly realize that they were outmatched in more ways than one. Having run out of fuel, they had no way to save themselves, as the klaxosaur was about to crush them. Although fortunately, Squad 13, with their Franxx and Lions respectively, were able to pull them out of the way and save them just in time. From the command center, Hachi would tell Squad 26 to fall back and would allow Squad 13 to handle the situation. Looking at it from this point of view, a Gutenberg-class klaxosaur was more than enough of a reason to bring out Voltron. As such, permission was given by Hachi at once, and the call for Voltron was to be formed. The girls would make an opening. The 5 Franxx would pin down the klaxosaur, while the boys would form Voltron and would go in for the final strike. Strelitzia would tell Hiro to hang on a little longer, but as the boys attempted to form Voltron, the Red Lion going to join them, he would be quickly smashed away. Hiro's body was starting to give out. The girls would attempt to buy room. 02, seeing what happened, would rush to Hiro in Strelitzia, yelling out for Hiro to wake up. But Hiro wasn't responding. Strelitzia and 02 were starting to lose their connection. It was happening all over again. This always happened. No one ever lasted. And as such, Strelitzia and 02 would begin to transform. The Iron Maiden turning back into its savage lion form as it stood over the body of the Red Lion. The lioness would roar and yell out into the sky as it would begin to go on a rampage, trying its best to protect the red lion. The others watching on would be horrified. Ichigo would lose her connection to Delphinium as she was breaking down. She couldn't believe that Hiro had actually died. It couldn't have been true. Goro tried to snap her out of it, telling her that they needed to remain focused on fighting the Klaxosaurs. Hachi and Nana would be worried from the command center as well. For all the times for this to happen, why it have to be now? As the Franxx and the Lions would attempt to hold back the Klaxosaur, 02 going into its frenzied state, Hiro would find himself in another world. He would awaken, finding himself in a strange void. He wasn't sure of where he was, although if he had to guess, he was somewhere on the edge, where life and death would meet. This had to be the purgatory. He looked around to see many familiar faces, many of his friends and former allies. He looked around and he would see 02. However, as he called out to her, she would simply walk away. As he looked, he would hear a voice speaking to him. Is this where you want your life to end, young pilot? No, but I gave it my all. I did the best that I could. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Young man, you are the pilot for the Red Lion. A lion's heart is a heart that has no fear. No fear? This is not the time. This is not where things will end for you. But I can't. The moment Hiro said that, he felt something. He felt pain. Except it wasn't a physical pain. It was one inside of him. It felt like his heart. Like his heart had broken. He felt as though his heart had broken 1,000 times over. What is this feeling? Why do I feel like this? This pain. That is the pain that you share with her. Her heart weeps for you. It is torn. I hate this feeling. I must stop it. You must go back. This is not where it ends for you. Strengthen your resolve and have the heart of a lion. Hiro would slowly awaken. Through the comms, he could hear the screams of 02 as she yelled and thrashed in pain. Hiro needed to be there for her. He needed to hold her. That was the only thing he could think about in this moment. As if another force, knowing what Hiro wanted, 02 would feel something. A silhouette would form around her. Even if it seemed intangible, it felt as solid as the earth itself. As the silhouette wrapped itself around her, she knew this feeling. She knew who this was, even if he wasn't there. The connection was restoring itself. she would feel a head rest on her shoulders. Darling? I told you I'm your partner, didn't I, 02? I won't leave you all alone. With that, the connection would be restored. Strelitzia would transform back into its Iron Maiden form, and the Red Lion would get back on its feet. Letting out a large blast of energy, it would shoot back at the Klaxosaur. The others couldn't believe what was happening. Everyone wanted to cry tears of joy that Hiro was back, but they didn't have any time to waste. Right now, they had to deal with the Klaxosaur. Ichigo would get the Franxx into position once again, each girl taking one arm and one leg respectively, while Strelitzia would aim for the head. Once the opening was created, they would yell for the boys to do it. Goro and the 5 lions would get into position as the sequence would begin. Alright guys, just like we practiced, let's do this. Activate interlocks. Dinotherms connected. Infracells up. Mega thrusters are a go. Let's go Voltron force. Zoromi, Futoshi, form feet and legs. Hiro, Mitsuru, form arms and body. And I'll form the head. Everyone would watch as the 5 lions would come together. Hiro would form the right arm, Zoromi the left arm, Mitsuru the right leg, Futoshi the left leg. Goro would form the body as well as the head. The lions would connect as a great burst of energy would appear, blowing back the Klaxosaur as the Franxx would all hold it down at once. Standing in front of them, standing almost as tall as the Klaxosaur and double the height of the Franxx, it was here. It had arrived. Voltron was reformed. The boys would press forward with Voltron. Moving as one, they went straight towards the heart of the Klaxosaur. The Franxx would let go, tearing away and using their magma weapons. They would rip apart the Klaxosaur's arms and legs. 02 driving the spear straight through the head of the Klaxosaur, stunning it long enough as Voltron would propel the large being straight into the air. They would put everything they had into the thrusters. The Klaxosaur trying to morph once again. They would push deep inside until eventually Voltron itself was able to push through. Once they had found the core, Voltron would take hold of it with both hands, and laying out one final burst of energy, the boys would push the large core of the Klaxosaur into the sky. It looked as if it had been lifted on wings itself, and in the midst of a large explosion, the Klaxosaur would be completely destroyed. While the boys were happy that they had been able to pull it off successfully, the explosion itself caused Voltron to fall out of formation, each lion falling off as it fell to the ground. However, before the lions could make contact, each one would be saved. Delphinium would hold the black lion, Strelitzia grabbing hold of the red lion, Janista grabbing hold of the yellow lion, Argenti grabbing hold of the green lion, and Chlorophytum catching the blue lion, helping them as they all landed to the ground. The mission had been a success, and the operation had gone off successfully. Dr. Franxx would watch on in amazement. He could see the bonds that were being formed, the bond that gave them their strength, the bond of the two beings coming together as one to become something greater than themselves. As they descended, the Franxx and the Lions being put into a power-off mode, as the pilots would exit respectively. Hiro would rush to 02. She would catch him in her arms as he fell, and as the two were close, Hiro would tell her why he piloted. He found another reason, another purpose for why he piloted. It was because he wanted to be her wings, and that he wanted to fly with her in the sky itself, even though he wasn't sure what would happen next time. 02 would simply smile, telling him that he would be fine, just like the next time and the time after that, because as long as they were together, wherever they wanted to soar, their skies were absolutely limitless. This concludes Darling in the Franxx, Lionhearted, Part 2. Again, if you enjoyed today's video, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Make sure you check out everything else that we have on the channel and stay tuned for tomorrow's video, as we are going to be continuing What If Naruto Was Trained by Dr. Strange, Naruto Mystic Adventures, Part 2. But anyway, this is going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.